a fancy bio to read out here for Leanne, but suffice it to say, she is a good friend of mine. I feel like she's been an inspiration to me for sure, even before COVID and the pandemic and everything, but just her presence and her ministry throughout COVID. She's been a great resource to so many people. She is the digital communications person with the Diocese of Montreal. She's also a yoga instructor, children's educator, all around fantastic, fabulous person. And I'm just so glad that she's here with us today. And I'm not trying to put any pressure on her, but you're going to be blown away. Take it away, Leanne.
You're too kind, and thanks for the intro. I'll say a few more things about that, but I just want to say that I love being here, and I really love that Rob chose like an astronaut to be the graphic for this, because I feel like we're in this, this really cool time of in between, and that we are like navigating and exploring a new world together. So I love that, and I just feel just really, to be honest, really excited just to share some stories. So I am going to tell you stories. That's how this is going to roll. I'm going to sort of share some things and then open the floor for us to just share together. We will not be in breakout rooms. We'll be here all together. And Rob, if you would be so kind as to help me. Oh, my cat is joining. If you'd be so kind as to help me just to select, who would speak. I'd love to get as wide of a selection of speakers. Thanks for that. Okay. And I will send you my notes if they're of any interest. If you'd like, I'm happy to, it's not a PowerPoint, but I have some notes then that I'll be sharing, and they're yours if you'd like them. As I said, I do have stories to tell, and I just want to start by saying that this is how it's going to roll, because stories, of course, as followers of Jesus, are what got us here. And stories, I believe, are what are going to carry us forward in this head-spinning time of change in the church. Stories are also what keeps many of us glued to our digital devices, longing to share and hear the stories of others in the form of a video or the written word or photos. But I'm interested also in hearing your stories too, as I said, so I'll invite you to respond throughout the talk. So I just want to say that I believe that we've all been in this sandbox of digital ministry in the past several years, and I think a number of us have some important learnings to share, so I would love to learn from you as well. Does that work for everybody? All in favor? Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about myself, who I am and what makes me tick. So my name is Leanne Matthews, and I am an educator by profession. I have more than 20 years of experience in the classroom. I'm also a children's yoga teacher. I'm an author and illustrator of a children's book. I'm really passionate about children's ministry and digital communications and helping people to make meaning. I did write an ebook for my work in the Anglican Diocese of Montreal on event-based ministry, and that's a free resource that you can download, and I can hook you up if you're interested. It does have a chapter on digital communications, so that is ours to check out if it's of interest. But what does all this say about me and why I'm here? I believe this is relevant because I'm comfortable with spontaneity. I'm comfortable with making a colossal amount of mistakes. I'm comfortable with trial and error and taking risks. And I think that's the only way for us to stay afloat in this ministry environment, particularly as we're in this in-between time in this new world. And I think this is actually the framework that does inspire my ministry role in the Diocese of Montreal. When I was handed this role, I have to tell you, I felt entirely ill-equipped. I literally did not know how to navigate a website. I was familiar with social platforms just because I'd used them for fun and to market some of my kids' yoga stuff, but I didn't have a high level of digital literacy at all. And I think that's so important because I always say, if I can learn how to do this stuff, I assure you, you can too. But most importantly, I really didn't feel that I had the institutional knowledge to represent an entire diocese. So I'm like, how can I possibly do that? I was lacking in confidence. And at that point, I was also the person who would say things like, I don't want to be on Zoom because we need to feel each other's energy in the room. P.S. I don't say that anymore, but that's the kind of thing I would say before. So I was sort of scared. But someone believed in me enough to recruit me despite my many limitations to take this on. So I did. And I got proactive and I got on my feet and I got resourceful. And I got to work responding to the digital needs of my diocese. I received mentorship and training, and I took advantage of the wealth of information, free information on YouTube and all of the free resources that you can find there. And I looked at what other church communities were doing, that felt noteworthy to me, and I acquired video editing skills. And all of this helped me step into a career that I love. And this required me to keep a really soft grip on what I think I know, and most importantly, to always be available to change. So here's my first story. Let's go back to around 2016 when, is everyone, like, is there anything I need to stop? Or is everyone okay so far? Okay, first story, we're ready? All right, back to 2016, Facebook had just rolled out its new live feature. It was like fresh. And at that point, I was working for the diocese as a project coordinator, and I was working closely with the missioner there. And we would, hang out every week in the office and just have these really funny conversations. We liked each other, so we were just chilling and talking, but tackling big ministry questions. Questions around decline and strategy and connecting people. There was like a lot of humor. We were hatching new ideas, and without much thought, one Tuesday morning, I said to him, like, we should just go live on Facebook. And he was like, and do what? And I said, well, I really don't know what, but we could talk about interesting things, and we're tackling ministry questions. Like, he's a smart enough guy. We're having some fun here. It could be of interest to others, so let's just do it. So honestly, without any real clue about what we were doing, we just hit the live button and we improvised. At that point, we happened to be hosting an event, a diocesan event, so we did a little bit of promo. We had some super awkward banter, and that was the first of a weekly show on Facebook that we started. I created a hashtag, and I did some branding with a graphic, and we started counting the shows and calling them episodes. We invited people to be a part of it. We interviewed all kinds of really smart, interesting people, including 2 Anglican primates, which was kind of cool. And at that time, we were having a lot of fun treading the delicate Anglican line, potentially offending some people. But mostly what we heard was that people were really finding us to be a point of connection for them. They were hearing stories that they were not hearing in the church. They were hearing sometimes a little bit of controversy, as I said. And we were bringing people insights, ideas, from a new perspective. People who are even unchurched were tuning in saying, oh, this is kind of something that I feel is relatable. This was not a conventional Anglican approach or means of communicating. And people were asking, well, what is your secret sauce? And I would say that the secret sauce for us was just the authenticity of just being ourselves and being conversational and maybe using a little bit of humor. When my colleague left Canada, sadly for me, I did continue on, and I adapted, and I called the show Live with Leanne, and I continued to tell the truth, to share ideas, and interview people. And I just simply showed up, was myself, and I was willing to make mistakes, which there are many, a lot of improvisation, taking risks. Rob, of course, was a guest on this show. And by the way, to this day, he is one of my favorite people to be myself with. He always gives me permission to do that, and I'm sure you all feel the same way. I closed this project of Live with Leanne after 150 episodes, and I made way for my colleague, Neil Mancourt, to start the National Church Initiative Pew and Beyond with Lisa Vaughn, which maybe you have seen. But all this to say that my lesson here was being willing to take risks, was being willing to trust myself, and to take advantage of free digital resources that were under my nose, and I made them work for me in my context. Now, I will take a break from talking and invite us to discuss the question of digital risks. Have you ever taken a digital risk that turned into something memorable? If you did, like, what did you learn? Or is there a mistake that you wouldn't repeat, or is there something you would like to share on that? And you can use the chat if you don't feel like talking, or you can raise your hand and share. Or if you have any questions about that, my first little story, I'm also here for that too. So.
Go ahead, Jane.
I started when COVID came and they told me that I had to go online or something. I said, not me. There's no way in God's creation am I getting online and making a fool of myself. I know how to do it, but I'm not doing it. And then it came to the point that I felt like, oh my, I have a lot of seniors who need to see a church service. I actually started recording home in my little Oli room, I calls it, which I'm always in here. And I even sang, got my guitar out and I sang. And I did all COVID-19, basically every week, recorded myself live, sang my songs, did my service. And there was so much views that when we got back into our churches, I was asked that, well, we don't need this anymore. And I said, well, I suppose not, but why not? And they said, because people's not coming back to church because you're still doing it online. I said, well, the basically thing is, if people want to come to church, they will. We're still only allowed 50 in church, and we can only add 50 in church. So how can I not do it? So I kept continuing to do it and live broadcasting it, live streaming it from our churches. It got to the point people wanted to see funerals. They wanted to see weddings. We had an ecumenical service there last night with all the churches got together. We've had 2 now since December. And basically, since Fiona, we've been trying to get together as a ministerial and do all this. That was put online last night, as well as the church having a large number. I can't say for sure, but River Pay is there, and I'm pretty sure it was close to 150 or more people in church. There's 915 views on that service this morning. And our Sunday services get the same thing. Do I like live streaming? Yes, I do. For the simple reason, it's not only people in Port Bass that gets to watch it, the shut-ins that stay, but you got the people from all over that's left Port Bass that come back and say, our beautiful church of St. James, thank you for sharing. But to be honest with you, there was no way in God's creation was I going. But like you, Leanne, I learned through trials, and I'm still learning. Someone asked me the other day how to do something. I said, I don't know. And they said, well, how do you do it? I said, I haven't. And then I managed to do it. And they said, well, how did you get it done? I said, again, please don't ask me. I don't remember. I just went in, I fiddled around, it came up. And I'm still doing that. Sometimes I write it down. I get a little bit brighter and I write it down so I know what to tell them. But again, I've gotten real brave. And it's like you say, don't be afraid to laugh at your own self, because God bless me. I laugh all the time. I have no choice. But thanks be to Queen's College, I am learning a lot because I'm trying to finish up a bachelor's degree, and it's wonderful to be able to use Zoom and go to meetings, and we do a lot of things online. And I'm really a fan of the digital age, I got to say.
Can I say 2 things in response? Well, one thing in response to that, and I just wanted to mention a comment that's there. I would pay good money to subscribe to a Live with Jane Allen series on Facebook. Jade, I think you would make a great host for something like that, because you're so funny and just yourself. And that's in digital communications. I mean, I think that's what 95% or more of what's needed is just being genuine and authentic and just being yourself.
I can't be any other way. I mean, well, that's me. And if I want to say something that I don't feel is appropriate after it's out, I went, oops, I maybe not should have said that. But anyway, it's out now. I apologize if I offended anybody.
Thank God for Jane Allen. And the other comment I just wanted to point to, Bill Strong shared a common experience that so many of us learned about having the right copyright permission before live streaming. All of a sudden your video is shut down and nobody can access it. But yeah, we all learned that on the fly, didn't we, Bill? Gwen.
Something that I've tried, and I did it once and no, twice, and I did have success with it in some ways, but I haven't gone back to it, is the doing the live. So I think I need to get that courage again. The first time I did it, it was just during our cake auction. And I just did a quick live. Here we are. Here are all the beautiful cakes that are up for auction. So it was a safe live for me. It was just me. And then the next one I did was on the anniversary of our 60th anniversary, and I interviewed some people around the parish. But I didn't take it it was right before Christmas, and then everything started to happen. So, but that's just something that I did go out on a limb for, and it has potential. And my brain is going crazy here today with things that I can be doing and whatever. So I'm taking notes and stuff. So, yeah, that's just something that came to mind that I did.
Hermes?
Yeah, so for me, it's been, my learning has been about continuing to deliver on the fly. So when we started, we do morning prayer once a week online. And we have 3 weekday services, one of which is online, and that's morning prayer. And when we began, we were still on lockdown, so we were not allowed to gather in church. And it worked fine then. But the tricky part for me was, what do we do with the music, for the hymns that we sing during morning prayer? Because I wasn't yet aware of the wide availability of the hymns with the tunes that we were familiar with. So I actually had to sing them, initially with no music. And then the feedback came, well, we want to hear the music. So then I had to find the instrumental version of the hymn with the tune that the congregation was familiar with, and kind of play it in the background, sing it, record it, and then insert it in the presentation that we would use during morning prayer. So it came across as accompanied singing. And then as time went along, I recognized that the hymns were widely available. Actually, I think it's been increasing as time has continued, as we go along, so that now I can insert the video in the presentation. And then my children returned to school. So, I mean, and morning prayer takes place at 6:30 a.m., which is when I'm in the midst of getting ready to leave the home to take them to school. So then I had to use my phone as a hotspot, because and connect my laptop to my phone while one of my children is advancing the slides. So it really has just been, how do you continue to deliver in the midst of volatility? And and I keep praying and saying, God, should we stop this? God, should we stop this? Because you see what's happening, and I continue to hear, no, you're not stopping it. No, you're not stopping it. No, you're not stopping it. And so you continue to do, and God just continues to provide a way for it to continue to be done, so that we reach people via the morning office. So yeah, it's been quite a test of volatility, of agility in ministry.
I love this this theme of just people continuing to listen to God and go forward, even when the going gets tough, or it feels weird, or it feels awkward, or it feels hard. So I appreciate all of your efforts and sharing, and all the trial and error. Shall we move on to my second story? Okay. So my next story is about a ministry that I founded called Supper Club. It was a face-to-face ministry, but I need to give you a little bit of context before I I describe how we pivoted. So about 7 years ago, I started hosting this sort of dinner gatherings, this dinner church, using a variety of approaches. They're with worship and music and prayer and guest speakers, workshops, sometimes with Eucharist, sometimes without Eucharist. These gatherings just continue to ebb and flow and evolve and change like all good stories do. I attended church planting conferences and really started listening to stories of small faith communities taking root. And I became inspired to experiment and to take risks, to try new things. I read books, and one in particular that I would like to mention to you is a book called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. She has also modified the book to include digital gathering options as well. So you could go to her website. There's lots of free stuff there. You can subscribe to her Substack, Priya Parker, The Art of Gathering. Anyway, I listened closely also to the feedback of my community and to the wisdom of others. And here's a loose outline of how these in-person events took place. There was like a networking, mingling sort of part at the beginning. People would show up, usually from various parts of the city, so it took time to travel from work. Maybe have a glass of wine and chit chat, and then we'd have a check-in around the table. There'd be worship with some music, definitely with some prayer, then dinner with a guided conversation, and community announcements and closing prayer. So that's the kind of format. And honestly, we realized that conversation, personal reflection, and sharing, and basically truth-telling, that was a shared value of this community. So Supper Club quickly earned a reputation of being a safe space, a space where people were able to express real feelings, sometimes when they challenged, even sometimes challenging church dogma, and often there were dissenting opinions about the church. Some people expressed harm at the ways that members, they had been harmed by the church and pain. So we came around the table and were really ourselves in an authentic way. Eventually, Supper Club, we outgrew our small table, and we started eating up all the food, and we had the problem that we often don't hear about in the church, that we didn't have enough space at the table. Then the pandemic struck, actually very soon at that point. In 2020, March, we were at capacity in Supper Club, pandemic struck, and a familiar story for all of us. It changed everything. We had to pivot really quickly. We had to provide solace for each other in a time of real fear and real uncertainty, but we had to keep that community together. So we didn't know what to do, but we'll do what everyone else is doing. We'll check it out on Zoom. I was a little bit skeptical about how this would work, but I'm going to tell you right now, the greatest shock was when we clicked live on that Zoom screen, and all of a sudden, instead of having to strain across tables to hear and see one another, because as I said, our table was getting quite big with maybe 30 or so people at it, we could actually hear each other and see each other, and the intimacy of the community was rekindled on Zoom, and it was better than I could ever have imagined. It was really such an encouragement in such a discouraging, difficult time. We met weekly during, particularly during those first months of the pandemic, to share our stories, to reflect, to pray, and be together. We made new friends. We grew our community past our boundaries, our physical borders were no longer a limitation. And here is an outline of how the online gatherings went. So we would gather for a shorter period of time. Instead of 2 hours, it was more like 1.5 hours. We did a check-in. We had some prayer. We had a presentation that took various shapes, which I'll talk about in a moment, a discussion, and closing prayer. But while I'm here and just referring to that format, I need to also let you in on some of the pitfalls of this approach. In the early days of the Digital Supper Club, check-ins took a really long time. People were lonely and isolated and needed to share and connect, and honestly, sometimes it was exhausting for other members to sit around and listen to one another. So we had to really be very intentional about check-in and set a very specific time frame for that. But some of the interesting things that we did in our time of digital experimentation were taking turns as a community sharing our digitally sharing our prayer practices. So some examples, some people were using music as a way of accessing the divine. So they would share a piece of music and we would reflect on it. Contemplative prayer, meditation. Somebody wanted us to have essential oils, so I drove around to the locals and gave them each a little sample of essential oils so we could have a sensory experience, each from our own location. We also had movie watch parties. We watched Pray Away, which is a documentary, and I recruited this specialization of somebody who was had a background in providing pastoral care to LGBTQ members. So that we did that online. We did an exploration of the Lord's Prayer with somebody who was an expert in that topic. We had book launches. We had pizza nights where I either delivered pizza to people's houses or gave them a coupon code where they could order pizza, and we ate the pizza together at the same time. We did a live dramatization of the Last Supper. During Lent. We've had listening circles with a trained listening facilitator. We did the Evolving Faith Conference together because we received a grant from a Supper Club member who allowed us to participate in that. I don't know if you're familiar with the Evolving Faith Conference, but that's one of the things that like Nadia Boltweber might be a part of, for example, and Sarah Bessie. Anyway, all this to say, thanks to the impact of those digital days of Supper Club, we continued to meet using the digital format. We've had 2 Bible studies in the past 6 months. One of them just happened during Lent. For us, a Bible study on Zoom is the ideal platform, saving everyone time and money and allowing us to have that meaningful connection in small groups that you can that is really impactful on here. We also have a Facebook group, since we're talking about digital, that not just a page. We have a group where it's closed group members only, where we can put in prayer requests. We can honor each other's birthdays. We can have a bit more intimacy in that group, and allows us to stay connected in between gatherings. And it really enhances our ministry immeasurably. We do also meet in person again, but we have not left behind our online experience. So I now will open the floor to your learnings, and if you would be so kind as to consider sharing a digital practice that you have retained since the pandemic, and one that you experienced and released and are no longer doing. Again, you can use the chat or raise your hand, or if you have any questions about anything around Supper Club, I'm here for that too.
I'll jump in, Leanne, and just to say I loved hearing about your dinner church, and it's really cool to hear about another community that's having similar experiences of relationship and intimacy, because I think sometimes I often say we're kind of a unicorn at Harbor. Like nobody seems to it just seems so new to so many people. So it's just really neat to hear how those relationships have built. And one of the questions I have is, do you find folks are is it kind of like a wagon wheel where dinner church is like the hub and the only way people connect is through there? Or are you finding people are connecting to each other outside of the community as well? And just wondering.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm just going to say very clearly that it's been a real challenge. We are no longer 30 around that table. Everything really collapsed at COVID, and we've never come back to being what it was before. We're still very much in a rebuild phase. And I get, when we gather, our Bible study had 10 people or something, and we get together in person, it's, oh my gosh, sometimes even less. So we've had a picnic, maybe 6 people. It's not what it was. So I'm not even sure what to say about what's the wagon wheel or what's not. It's all kind of just in a time of I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore. But I feel that the digital piece for us, and I think this is the same for you too, Dawn, is actually has more traction and strength than the in-person, because it's just more accessible. People can just hop on here, while you're making your potatoes in the oven, and you're able to do it. It's not it's not demanding so much of people. So I think for me, it's stronger, our online Supper Club than. Does that answer the question? I don't even. Yeah, sort of. No. Okay.
Unmute. There we go. Just trying to unmute. Yeah, no, I can totally appreciate that. The other thing I was thinking about, just as you were saying, it's so much more accessible. One we're finding, like, we are getting folks from like 20 to 80. Like, it's not, we're not finding the technology is as much of a hurdle as it might have once been. What are you finding?
Not 80, for sure. But I think that people did just, have to get some digital skills, and so they're more comfortable, way more comfortable than before. They would never have done this before. I could never have done this before, and yeah. So but definitely an older demographic. People are okay with it. It's not just millennials or whatever, or Gen Z. Like, it's people can do it now. Herman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the areas where, and this is, I guess this is some form of ministry, where we have benefited is with meetings. So that, because prior to COVID, all of our meetings were in person. And now the meetings, I think there is a continuation of the online meetings. And it means then that participation can be wider. So, I mean, our country is one diocese. And for example, where I live, it takes and the seat of our diocese is in the capital, which outside of rush hour is about an hour and a half away from where I live. And most of our meetings tended to be held in the capital city. And if I had to go to a meeting, most of which are held in the evening, because some of the people who participate in meetings work, and therefore we have to put in a time when they can attend. It would mean leaving home at about 2:30, which conflicts with the pickup schedule for my children from school. Leaving home at 2:30 to go to Port of Spain for a meeting, probably at 4 or 4:30. Church meetings are not known for their brevity. So probably leaving Port of Spain at, I don't know, 7 o'clock, 7:30 to then come back home. So that's like a 7-hour engagement of time, as opposed to now, where if the meeting begins at 4 or 4:30, then you log on about 5 or 10 minutes after. And when the meeting ends, you're already at home. And I think it's been a benefit for the participants as well as for the church, because then it means the resources that the church can tap into for its committees are no longer only retired people, and they can come from wherever within the diocese. And while some people have said, we need to drift back to in-person meetings, I think the online meetings help more than anything else, because now it means even if I get caught up in traffic on my way home from work, I can still log into the meeting and listen to the discussion and participate, as opposed to missing it altogether. So I think that has certainly been a plus for us as a church. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and even the impact, the environmental impact that we have by not traveling. So many of these meetings used to take people who travel from all over the world in airplanes, which is, the worst thing we can do. And now we don't have to do that as much anymore. And we can still have a really meaningful experience. And I think it's not just being able to meet, but it's actually, are we able to meet? And as I said earlier in my talk, we need to feel the energy in the room. There's, we've all had really, I'm sure by now, we've all had profound experiences of connection and meaning on these platforms, right? It doesn't mean that we can't connect properly.
Yeah, Leanne, Bill Strong made a really interesting comment, talked about how his parish hired a summer student to visit with seniors to give help in accessing their online services. And I thought, what a great way to use that opportunity not just to take care of our buildings, because usually that's what students are doing. They're cutting the grass, they're painting, they're doing repairs, but to use a summer student for ministry purposes and in particular in this kind of way, I think is really creative. I had a thought there, Leanne, when you were talking, and you said something to the effect of the digital coming together in, say, Zoom, doesn't demand as much from people. And it's like a light bulb went off for me, because the church is so used to demanding everything from people, right? To the point of really burning people out and causing harm to people. And so that we have this tool at our disposal now to ease some of the demands on people. And I'm not sure we know what to do with it. And I think there's still a mentality around that says engaging in these kinds of things is maybe not as important as being in person in the old way. You know what I mean? Like almost the attitude of, well, if I suffered, you've got to suffer too. And we've always done it this way. And so God forbid that we choose a way that makes it a bit easier for people. So I guess, I don't know if there's a question in there, but maybe the question is, what does the church do with convenience? So if there's things that make things easier, maybe we should adopt them.
I love that. And I love just the idea of changing our mindset around sitting and expecting people to come to us and actually being able to meet people where they are. I know that's something that came up a lot during the pandemic, but isn't it a gift for us to be able to show up in your kitchen while you're preparing your breakfast for your family and being able to give you added value in your morning? And that's really what we are here to do, is to enhance people's lives, not to send them into burnout.
Yeah, and there's something more intimate than that in that, right? So if you and I and a group of people are engaging, and I am in my kitchen and I am in the throes of chopping veggies for supper, or I think there's something a little bit more intimate than that, than meeting in the church basement. I mean, I guess there's pros and cons to both sides. Jane, and then Hermes.
We have a Facebook page, of course, where we put everything onto it, and our people just go in and see what they need to see. But I have to tell you this story. When we first started COVID and we were doing our online services, live services, or I was singing or doing whatever, acting a fool, that anyway, I had 3 people that were up in their late 80s that said, I don't know nothing about this. I said, do you know your name? Yes. Do you know my name? Yes. Well, let's get you a tablet. What? Where? A tablet. And do you know now that those 3 people are in their 90s, and I walked into their homes and they've been on Facebook, and they look at me and say, this is one of the greatest inventions that I've ever known. I said, you really like your Facebook? Yes, I do. And true, one person I walked in the other night was playing cards on her thing to patients. She said, when there's nothing online, I love the fact that I can go in and have a game of patience with myself. She said, it passes my time. And sometimes I go back, she said, and watch just the videos over from back in COVID days. And like, what I'm trying to say is you're never too old to learn, even though we think sometimes that are 90-year-olds. But I'm in a parish where most of my people are 80s and 90. I do more funerals than I do anything. But basically, it's a series where if you got the patience to help someone out, they're all there to learn, especially our seniors.
Go ahead, Hermes.
Yeah, I was one of the benefits as well of the continuing online ministry is the subliminal one, in that and I mean, of course, there's some meetings, some online events where you do have to use headsets because some of the discussion might be confidential. But then there are others that you can just have playing, and especially with teenagers in the house with me. Sometimes they don't always want to join me in viewing a service or listening to something. But if I play it on loud and they're within earshot of what's playing, there is something, and it's happened on more than one occasion where I play whatever it is. I'm in a meeting, it could be Bible study, or it could be a church service, and I play it, and they're not necessarily viewing it with me, but they're within earshot, and then subsequent to me viewing it, they make reference to it. So something impacts them. And so there's a bit of the message getting out to them and impacting them. You know, it's like the sower casting the seed, and the seed falls on hopefully fertile soil. So there is that subliminal dimension to it that we really don't tap into if we limit ourselves to the in-person sessions only. Yeah. Thanks.
Excellent. Jody, go ahead. You're muted, Jody.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I was doing much better when I was talking to myself. I just wonder, has there been any thought or constructive movement towards churches in, Episcopal settings, diocesan settings have dioceses? Has there been any movement towards creating an online community diocese as a diocesan ministry, which focuses on a variety of areas in one place, with a variety of people? Because right now, there's a whole lot happening with each parish scrabbling for space online and people's interests online. And I'm just wondering how constructive that is as a diocesan ministry to have an online presence, to spread the gospel, to provide a community for a conversation exchange, to organize programs for formation and growth. I think this, like every little place in Newfoundland now is scrabbling to keep their church. Every little place is scrabbling for a little bit of space and a bit of interest and a production that's going to draw crowds. But if it's about spreading the gospel, it's not about maintaining what we are where we are, but putting together some kind of a constructive approach to this in a big way, in a big picture, so that when you go on the diocesan website, you can go through traditional, contemporary, modern, left field, right field, church in the woods. I mean, I don't care what it is, but just like, I think what we're doing right now is a transition towards that. I'd like to think it is, because the fact that we're all doing our little bit online in different ways, using the little bit of talent and education we have around offering things production-wise and so forth. I'd like to think that we're just transitioning towards hopefully some kind of a more, broader, wider, accepting, comprehensive diocesan ministry that can provide sort of, what people are searching for. Do you think there's a trend towards that, or do you see us keeping doing our own little thing in our own little places? Just wondering, Leanne.
Oh, a question for me. Okay, well, I can tell you that in my context, as doing communications for the Diocese of Montreal, like we are in a real pickle around that, because we are asking individual churches to come up with their own communication strategy for their parishes. And as you aptly mentioned, there's not a lot of energy or capacity for them to do so. However, if we were to do such a thing, because of the changing nature of each parish and their own unique voice that each parish can only speak into in terms of their strategy for communications, it wouldn't be possible for there to be a hub where one person would be able to articulate all the voices of all the various parishes and their approaches to ministry. So I think we have a capacity issue, if I had to break it down. And in an ideal setting, each parish would take this on. But I totally am mindful of the limitations in terms of energy that each parish is already faced with. So I like your vision, Jody, and I think we just need more people in order to make such a vision a reality.
Yeah, and I would add too that Bill Strong made an interesting point. He said that would be a paradigm shift. I would qualify that a little bit, and I would say that would require a paradigm shift. I think we would need to be thinking differently about church, and also I think as parishes are struggling, whether it's financially or with human resources, dioceses are doing the same thing, right? So the idea of like who is going to do these things, I think, would be a big challenge. But I like Jody's idea.
I think mimicking online what we're doing in each place is not very constructive.
No.
When we're looking at creating strategic plans and a major focus, because I think this actually provides us with an opportunity to do it differently than we're doing in person and physically. And I just think that the repetition of what we're doing just doesn't kind of sit well with me. Not only that, but I mean, each little parish now is paying a fortune to upgrade their audio and visual potential. I mean, we're getting ready now to spend a lot of money to upgrade where we are and what we're doing so we can provide a better production. And the issue we're facing is All Saints Foxtrot is using one type of programming software to do that. Upper Gullies is using another kind, and we've got to pick our own. And it's just seems to be a whole lot of energy and time going into that now. And I'm not sure if that's the most constructive use of the limited resources that we have.
Fair point. I have said before that I think digital ministry could be a way where parishes could come together and do something creative and different, and not just replicate what they're doing already in the building, and that I think could translate to the diocese too. But that takes money, it takes the right person. And Jody, in the diocese we're in, Eastern Diocese, we know there's been lots of examples of where people have been hired to do things with not much of a mandate, not much of a job description, and because of that, it didn't really work out. And then everybody throws their hands up and says, "Oh well, we tried that and that didn't work, so we're going to move on to something else." But I think there's something there for a conversation that says, if we were going to do this, and what would it look like, and making sure we had a plan and getting the right people involved and being willing to fail and it not go right, and then try again, something different, right? So I think there's something there, definitely. I think Maxine had her hand up.
I did, and then I was like, should I bring it up? But in our digital ministry course last semester, I had brought up roughly the same idea. Wouldn't it be great if the diocese could come up with something and everybody pool their resources and or time and or talents and have it almost like just a hodgepodge of everything, and people can pick and choose what they'd like to have for their own particular parish. Pool your resources. Like Gwen's got a wonderful handle on content and so on and so forth, that why reinvent the wheel? If you want to do it in your own parish, it's there to choose. And if you don't want to get into it that deeply, or to keep it individualized and have each parish autonomous, but yet pooling the resources might be an asset.
Yeah, the idea of parish boundaries is translated, unfortunately, over into the digital world, and I think we're still protecting our turf, and I think we're not. It sounds great, but I don't think we're willing to give up. This may shock people. We're not willing to give up control.
But once again, it needs to come from the diocese.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. I think good things happen from the ground up, not from the top down. I think Anglicans in particular, we have ourselves convinced that everything has to come from on high. Everything has to come from either like a letter from the bishop or some pronouncement or some diocesan committee that's got to make everything happen. And I just don't buy it. It hasn't worked for us. It has not served us well. Okay, and we need to focus on a ground up local partnerships. And even it doesn't have to be local anymore, because with digital technology, it can be when St. Mary's could partner with a parish in Labrador. You're not limited by, having to be next door to each other.
Maybe that's something we should talk about if you have a follow-up to this, a follow-up discussion, just even if a couple of us, like during that time, started the talk, and maybe somehow we could start something even just amongst ourselves here. So maybe Reverend Rob, that's something to keep in mind for the next one. His list is growing.
Yeah.
Can I just
like
share
a Saturday afternoon forum that we could all, jump in if you can, and if you can't, well, that's fine. But yeah, form a digital community.
Yeah.
You don't need me for that. You've already started it. Go for it.
Can I just share? I just want to share a local initiative that I saw in the northern suburbs of Toronto, and it was very much it was a larger church that went online and they'd already had a really good setup for, like, they had a really great soundboard system, and they just needed to add video, and it was great. And then just up the road, actually not up the road, like probably about a half hour, 40-minute drive away, there was another church that really didn't have anything. So what they did is the priest in Holland Landing came to Aurora every Sunday, and the two priests did the service together, and she just became, and so then you have two, I mean, you can have as many congregations as you want online. And so you had both congregations, and I mean, Aaron would announce what was happening in Holland Landing, and Karen would announce what was happening in Aurora. And but it was just a great way to, and that was something, I mean, I always have to be careful, because none of us knew when we went into COVID that it was going to last 2 years. We thought, like, we'll be done with this in 2 weeks and be done. But that was something I lament, is that more of us did not find ways to do stuff together, as opposed to repeating the same thing every Sunday in every church.
Absolutely. I know Kelechi had his hand up, but Kelechi, we're going to go to Leanne. She's got one more story. Hold on to your thought, your question, and when she's done, we'll come back to you first.
Yes, thanks. I do have one more story, but I also wanted to quickly just say that one of the other advantages of this whole digital revolution situation is that nobody is safeguarding what we can say and who we can say it to, and that's both horrifying and phenomenal, depending on who has the mic. So here we all are with this capacity that we didn't have before we started having this conversation. So we're free people. We're free. We don't need the bishop's permission to go live on Facebook. So is it okay if I go on with my final story? Thank you for that. Okay. My final story, well, it's not so much a story actually as a reflection. It's about AI. Because I just don't believe that we can really have a responsible conversation about trends in the digital church if we don't at least address this. I am not an expert on AI, but as I've already self-identified, I'm an experimenter, and that's what I've been doing, and that's what I would just like to share. And first of all, if you don't know, you probably already know that ChatGPT and its competitors are effectively revolutionizing the world. So if you think that the current arc of change that we've all been reeling from has been tricky, well, buckle up, because we haven't seen anything yet. This is what people who know a lot more than me about things are saying. It's mind-blowing what it can do. If you haven't played around with this technology, then just do so. It can write your sermons for you. It can create a social media calendar. It can make you a digital marketing strategy. It can pretty much do anything for you, with the exception of like your domestic tasks, but that's obvious. But people are both ecstatic and terrified about the potential of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, with good reason. Technology, as we know, in all of its forms, has the capacity to both be a force for tremendous harm and tremendous good. And for me, and for the purposes of this conversation, I think that we as the church need to retain the importance of being open to change and adaptation. Because now we know that we can't continue to do the same thing that we were doing, what we would have said before, like 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. But at this point, we can't continue to do the same thing we were doing 6 months ago, because that's how fast AI is changing the digital landscape. We cannot continue to carry out our ministry to the church without at least taking a good look around at the ways in which we, as humans, as God's people, all of us, we are effectively and inherently, we're changed. This is the way that we receive information, the way that we learn, the way that we speak, in the way that we communicate. It's all changing. And as the church, we are long overdue for a major course correction as this digital revolution is well underway. And with ChatGPT, we must brace ourselves for another tidal wave of change. This can be an exciting time for us. I don't think we should despair. I just think we should be ready. And so how do you think we can adapt to the rapid growth and expansion that we're seeing, especially when we're continuing to observe this trend of sort of decline in the church? Like, how do we hold these two polarities at the same time? I personally take comfort from what Ryan just said to us in the talk, that as we're moving more and more into a digital space, there will be an increasing need for us to be in intentional and creative face-to-face communities. So that is good news. And also, we still need to learn, and we still need to pay attention. We still need to ask questions and be inquiring and be incredibly curious about what is going on. We're showing up to sessions like this, so kudos to all of us. We need to make friends with these platforms, and we need to find ways to use all these resources to serve. That's what we're here to do, to serve. So as I said, I am far from an expert, but I'm in ChatGPT or in AI, but I'm going to just share with you quickly a few ways that I've already used it in my ministry in the Diocese of Montreal. I'm having loads of fun with it, asking it questions, figuring out how to use it. I've been using it to generate social posts and to support some of my blog content. It's been effective at providing me with information on, let's say, like Holy Week, or generating some copy for International Women's Day. I posted a really spicy Facebook post with a BCP BAS debate, which got me into some hot water, but mostly because of the age-old controversy of the BCP and BAS. It practically went viral by Anglican standards, like viral meaning I had 418 engagements, and which is still not viral, but 1,187 people were reached, 1,887. That's a lot for us. I also use it to generate some content for Black Heritage Month. You can find interesting information about Anglican and diocesan church history, so it's really fascinating. I quickly did learn, however, that there are some major accuracy flaws using this technology. I was trying to gather some data, and I checked the data with our archivist at the diocese, and she was able to cross-reference this data, and there were some corrections that needed to be made. So just be mindful before posting. Definitely edit your content. And don't rely on copy and paste, because also you need to always post and whatever your sermons or posts or blogs, they always need to be in your unique language, and it's definitely kind of got a very cold tone to it. You really need to figure out how to input the questions in order to generate the most useful response. So you will need to experiment, ask it questions, research, play, get familiar. And consider what problems you think AI can solve. What problems can AI solve in your context? So I don't think I have time to open that up as a question, but I think it's something we could. I'll let Rob decide. I'll just say my closing remarks, and then I'll let Rob decide if he wants to have questions on AI or a conversation about that, because that's huge. But in conclusion, I do want to leave you with some words of encouragement. As we are living in a time of tremendous creative potential, we are able to access and draw from the inspiration, wisdom, and knowledge of artists, theologians, influencers, philanthropists, and changemakers from around the world with literally the touch of a button. So I do implore you to get curious and about all the ways that this technology is being leveraged for good. Telling stories, telling our stories, and listening to the stories of others, inspiring, innovating, consoling, sometimes with levity and sometimes in all seriousness. Let's get invested and curious about the transforming capacity of the digital realm, make it yours, and use all of this knowledge to revolutionize your ministry. The end. Or the beginning.
Yeah, the beginning. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you ended with the AI, artificial intelligence, for anybody who's been not really paying attention to the development, and just to show how quickly things are developing. I remember teaching a course. Well, I think it was when I taught the graduate level of faith and worship in the digital age last winter. And I remember having a week where we dealt with artificial intelligence and, really cutting edge technological advancements, and talking about some of the things that were already happening, but were about to get, really break out. And people looked at me like I was talking about science fiction, like they just had, like it was like, this is something from a comic book or something, like there's no way. And here we are now, we have this thing called ChatGPT that is, like Leanne said, revolutionizing the way we access information, think about intelligence. And I think most importantly, challenging the way we think about what it means to be human. I think the biggest challenge, and I say this over and over again, and I hope people listen to me, the biggest challenge we're facing as a society, let alone a church, is what does it mean to be human? And these technological advancements are really stretching our understanding about what it means to be human. But also the other thing that goes along with that is how do we then form community as human beings? And technology is challenging some of that, and technology is enhancing some of those things, as we've talked about just a little bit here today. I want to go back to Kelechi because he had a point or a question. I don't know if it's regarding this particular thing, but that's okay. And I will leave just a couple minutes if anybody has any comment or question about the whole AI thing. Go ahead, Kelechi.
Oh, thank you. Quick, I was just going to talk about what you said from building from the ground up. And I think that is really important, especially with technology, because most of the people at the top might not be as familiar with the advancements. So I think that is really key in not limiting ourselves, but like connecting and working together. So yeah.
And Kelechi, I think moving forward, the church is going to become more and more local, and more and more contextual, right? So like, what is unique in, each particular community. That's why, I mean, it can be helpful to share ideas, say, I did this and we tried this. But I think one of the most important skills that leaders, whether clergy or lay people, can have is really, it's almost like the work of like a sociologist or like like to study your community and see what's going on and know your community and know what will work, right? So there's no point for you to try to do a big old fancy Facebook Live production if people aren't there, if people aren't using that platform, right? Maybe what people are craving is intimate community like you can get through Zoom. Right? So knowing your community and your context, I think, is really, really important. So any last comments or questions for Leanne, generally or particularly about the whole artificial intelligence phenomenon? Go ahead, Gwen.
Yeah, I just wrote in the comments, I don't know. It was kind of a lark because I was wondering, my first time writing the annual report, I wanted to do it one on social media, and someone said, use ChatGPT. So I tried it, and like it gave me the words that I did, because I'm not trained in this area and I haven't been in it long enough. I'm not surrounded by the words I should use, and like I couldn't believe it. I was amazed at, like, in 1 second. So like, why not use it if it's going to help us save time and give us the right context? It just makes things go faster instead of me scratching my head for 2 hours trying to figure out the sentence structure or something. There it was, Unfortunately, I didn't get to finish it for the annual report because I got sick. But I had already used it a little bit, but that was where I saw that how good it can be and how it was such a time saver for me. And so if you're one person trying to do all these little things, it's just another tool in our toolbox that we can use to help us. So I see nothing but positive for it. Like Leanne said, you have to read it and put your own words in it and make it work for you, but you can still draw so much from what it posts, right? And it's fun talking with it because I have fun with it, and it goes, I'm like, have a nice day. I am a computer. I do not have right? And then I push it again. Well, and it's just fun to, and that's what you have to do with it to get comfortable, is just play with it and see what it'll give you. And so anybody that hasn't used it, I challenge you to go out and try it this week. That's your one tool for the week, ChatGPT.
So Gwen is giving us some homework.
Yeah, that's the teacher in me.
And I like what Gwen is saying, and especially about that word tool. I think that's really important. All the digital things are tools, but I would also say digital technology in particular is more than just a tool. Like any kind of technology, we form the technology, but then the technology forms us. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where the breakneck speed is coming up now. Like, we're not keeping pace with the self-awareness of what this technology is doing to us. And so just, a bit of self-critical reflection, or like critical reflection on the technology itself, I think is always very important, right? They are great tools, absolutely. But I think we also need to be asking the critical questions about what are these things doing to us as people, as communities, as societies, as a church. And our changing understanding of God, and our changing understanding of like the interconnectedness of the Spirit. Like, all of these technological advancements are really pushing at the edifice of what we think is the church, right? And I think, Leanne said something about you don't need bishop's permission to do a lot of this stuff. But I think this is why a lot of denominational leaders are really nervous about digital technology, because it undermines the traditional power structures within the institutional church. For good or ill, you might think that's a great thing, but you might think, oh my God, that's a horrifying, terrible thing.
Yeah, also in terms of who holds the knowledge. So now, and who is an expert. So absolutely. Gwen discovered very quickly that suddenly she was an expert in social media because she had access to the same information that I have access to, and that everyone else has access. So it's just turning these hierarchies upside down a little bit in terms of who's holding the power and the knowledge, because it's available to us.
And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the research of Heidi Campbell. Like, she is really the name when it comes to digital technology in the church. And she talks about how the changing structure of leadership online is towards what she calls digital creatives. And so we would hardly equate creativity and leadership offline. That's not two things we would tend to put together. But in the digital world, creativity and leadership go hand in hand. That's how you get and gain authority, is through creativity and engagement, which is kind of different than offline, where the authority is given to you by your office, and then you utilize it. So it's changing even the way we understand that. Thank you so much, Leanne. Wonderful, absolute good stuff, and great conversations, great stories. I am a firm believer in the power of story. So let's